Hello, my name is Tom, Community Manager at Urban Games. Welcome to the third Development Highlights video. As we showed in the last two videos, we wanted to give the player as much flexibility and freedom as possible. At the same time, mastering challenges and adapting to demands is an important part of any tycoon game. In Transport Fever 2, this is mainly carried out in the simulation of cities and industries. Cities play a central role in the game. Fulfilling demands encourages city growth. In contrast, not taking care of demands might cause cities to shrink. An important goal was to make city demand interesting and engaging and at the same time easy to understand. Thus, demands are broken down into three categories. The first category is transport, which is split into two parts, private and public transport. Inhabitants need to travel from their home to their workplace in industrial zone, or they want to spend their free time in the commercial zone. They take the journey by either car or with lines and vehicles provided by the player. The more destinations inhabitants can reach, the better. To visualize the reachability, a new layer was introduced, which shows the path inhabitants take. Improving roads and expanding the passenger network by building new lines are just two examples that help to fulfill this demand. The second category is the demand for cargo. Industries from several different cargo chains with increasing complexity are waiting to be connected by the player. Resources must be picked up from source industries and delivered to manufacturing industries. Incomplete chains function, but in order to increase the size and production of industries, the player has to make sure that produced items are delivered to another factory or a city. This is also shown in the new cargo flow layer. With growing cities or an expanded network, it might get necessary to increase the capacity of the existing lines. However, not all industries increase their production at the same rate. At some point, it will get necessary to connect new source industries to the network to keep up with the demand. The third category is quality. Firstly, the player has to take care of the throughput of the transport network, as overcrowded stations will decrease the quality. And secondly, cars stuck in traffic jams on congested roads is also considered a factor hindering city growth. Last but not least, vehicles generate emissions, and of course inhabitants dislike high emissions. Thus, they should be kept at a minimum in residential areas. Several new layers will help to find the weakest points. There are always various approaches to tackle challenges. For example, vehicles can be replaced with more modern models with lower emissions. Another way to reduce emissions is to change the takeoff and approach direction for aircraft on airports. Also, tracks and highways can be moved away from residential areas or put into tunnels to avoid emissions on the surface completely. All demands depend on each other. For example, improving public transport will add emissions from player vehicles. If inhabitants then no longer use their cars, traffic jams get less frequent. So, to maximize city growth, a look at the bigger picture is required. We spent a lot of time developing and refining the new simulation, and we hope this video was a good introduction to this important part of the game. We are looking forward to showing you more of the game. Thank you all very much for your attention and your interest in our game. All the best from the whole team at Urban Games. And until next time, bye bye.
Holy cow, ladies and gents, what a fantastic development highlight video that is. My name, of course, is Open Potato. This is the development highlight series for Transport Fever 2, where I take a look at exactly what is going on in each and every one of these development highlight videos. Now, I'm a little bit late to the party on this one. This development highlight came out a couple of weeks ago. Due to a variety of factors, I've only just now been able to sit down and watch it, and oh boy, what a video! What a video. I'm really disappointed that I didn't see it earlier, but that's okay, because my anticipation was heightened and my excitement was increased greatly. So now, without further ado, let's get down to looking at exactly what is going down in this here little video. Right, so I'm just going to scroll through the video and make some comments and notes about exactly what the chap was saying about specific things. First and foremost, one of the most interesting one of the most interesting parts about this series was the increased number of increased number of layers, which will now help present yet more information to the player. Now, I love me a good layer, and it was really cool actually. If we go towards right down towards the end of the video, this in particular was very cool. The fact that you now have noise pollution and presumably actual pollution as well, so environmental pollution, and that will of course have a knock-on effect to residents' happiness. So it's now no longer possible for you to stick a train station right down behind a row of houses without there being some consequence, and I like that. I like that a lot because, I mean, in Transport Fever 1, you could just try and stick a train station. You know, you might demolish a couple of residential houses, and bada bim, bada boom, you've got a passenger train station right in the middle of town, effectively. But now you're not going to be able to do that, or at least you're not going to be able to do that without trading off some of the happiness of your dear citizens. And I suppose there is going to be, they're probably going to want to vacate the area if it turns out that it's too darn noisy. And again, all of it has been presented in a way that I think is absolutely fantastic. As we see right here, the layer adapts as the train moves. So you have in effect a nice active layer, which is very cool indeed. I like it a lot, and it looks really smooth. Looks really nice. And whilst we're looking at this lovely vista, can we just take a little second to comment on how unbelievably sharp this game looks? There was one moment right here, and then there was one moment, I think it was right here actually, where you just have a look at the game, and it's like, wow, what a gorgeous landscape. The buses look delightful. The detail is immaculate. It looks really good. So I love the way that it looks. Also, whilst we're looking right over here, we can chat a little bit more about the transportation system and the public versus private transport. So as you can see, everyone has got their own cars, and this car looks particularly old. This car looks old compared to modern day vehicles. This looks right about up to scratch about what a modern day vehicle would look like, and that looks like a car from the 1980s or something along those lines. Anyway, the point is that presumably cars will change throughout the ages as consumers are able to buy more and more modern cars. But anyway, that's sort of by the by, just a fun little point of interest. The real thrust of my argument here is that private cars are very cool, and I'm looking forward to seeing how people utilize them, because now it will be quite apparent the areas that you need to fulfill demand. What I mean by that is that in the original Transport Fever, passengers decided on a bunch of stuff on how they would get to their destination. Some passengers took the cheapest way, and other passengers took the fastest way. So that would mean that some people took the train, others people took the bus. Now passengers have an additional way, and making that sort of value calculation is going to further increase the complexity of the game, and whether passengers will take your transport over taking their own transport, taking their own cars. So it's really going to be very cool. You now know what you're competing against. You are competing against an individual's desire to drive their car and arrive at a destination quicker. And indeed, I don't know what the sort of value proposition will be to customers, whether there's going to be specific factors which dictate them getting to a location faster, quicker, in style, whatever. Who knows? It's going to be interesting to see how that models in the game later down the line. Right, and this is indeed the area where you're going to get a whole bunch of information about how that is modeled. So as you can see, there is a further layer to hone your skills, or to help hone your skills about planning your private transport lines, or planning your public transport lines to compete against private transport. I mean, as you can see here, there is a density of public transport used and a density of private transport used. It looks like the train over here. I presume that this is the number of people that take the route. I don't exactly know what these numbers are. I don't believe that they said, but I presume that this 28 here represents, well, the capacity of a bus, for example. And then this 192 figure here represents a train that comes in and stops at this station, and the 257 number represents a train that, you know, comes into the station and heads off down south. So you're now going to be able to see exactly where you should be establishing your transport routes, which I think is fantastic. It's really, really good. I mean, there will always be, presumably, a couple of people that want to travel on their car for whatever reason, and you know, that value proposition that I've talked about just briefly earlier will make all the difference when it comes down to an individual calculating whether they wish to use private or public transport. But for the most part, I think it's safe to say that if there is, for example, a bit up here where there are 4 people using private transport, if you extended your bus line just by a little bit, then there is a good chance that you could maybe capture 2 or 3 of those additional people, and therefore, you know, increase the value and number of passengers on a specific line. And of course, each and every passenger that rides on your bus or your train is an extra little chunk of change for you. This was another scene which I thought was absolutely stunning, and really, I mean, just look at that. Look at the shine. Look at the sun. I mean, this is a proper industrial area. It feels really good. It feels really good. Feels really solid. I like the look of it. And so now we got a little bit of we get a little bit of an explanation about how industry will work, and more details obviously are still to come. But the conversation was primarily around whether the player could transport, for example, iron ore to a smeltery or a smelting factory, yes, whatever the case, and then whether that steel needed to be transported onto a further factory. And it looks like, I mean, it wasn't exactly clear. Have a listen to exactly what was said, and let me know what you think.
Incomplete chains function, but in order to increase the size and production of industries, the player has to make sure that produced items are delivered to another factory or a city.
Alright, so incomplete chains do function. Now, in Transport Fever, they do function up to a point, but only to the point where the output storage capacity and any storage capacity in a cargo transport hub is full. So whether that will be a big change in the game, or whether it's, you know, simply a rewording of the fact that incomplete chains do function up to a point, we will have to wait and see. But certainly the fact that the more items that you supply to a factory and the more items that you transport away from a factory are linked, and you can increase the efficiency of a factory by making sure that you take all of the items away in good time. I like that. I like that a lot. I also really like what is discussed next, which is all about scalability of, no, not here. Sure, whatever. We'll leave it here whilst we chat about this. All about the scalability of resources. So, for example, a smelting factory will not constantly require 100 bits of iron to make 100 bits of steel. You might have it might take 75 bits of iron to make 100 bits of steel once your factory gets to a certain size, after you've fed it enough materials. Very, very cool indeed.
With growing cities or an expanded network, it might get necessary to increase the capacity of the existing lines. However, not all industries increase their production at the same rate. At some point, it will get necessary to connect new source industries to the network to keep up with the demand. The third category is quality. Firstly, the player has to take care of the throughput of the transport network, as overcrowded stations will decrease the quality. And secondly, cars stuck in traffic jams on congested roads is also considered a factor hindering city growth.
Okay, so let's take a little second to digest exactly what that was all about. So quality of the stations and overcrowding That's very, very cool. I like that. I like how you now actually owe it to your customers to not have 450 people waiting on a specific station. You know, so the whole value proposition changes. It changes the way that the game is played. No longer can you rely on 450 people just sticking around at your station. You actively have to get them out of the station and to where they want to go. So again, it puts the player under more pressure, and I like that. Furthermore, traffic jams. I like the idea of traffic jams. It's gonna be very interesting to see whether that puts people off taking their private cars. So if there is a lot of traffic jams around the city that are caused by private transport, perhaps that is the perfect inroad for a bus service, and indeed that might. That might just be a slightly more profitable venture if you can get some cars off the road and people can shoot through traffic and not have to worry about traffic jams. It's also this overlay really gives us a little bit more information really on how the city grid layout is to work. I don't know what these little padlocks are. Presumably something to do with access, maybe? Player owned. That's exactly what it is. And then there's traffic lights, and then there's precedence there for presumably pedestrians crossing the road. So if it is indeed player owned, as it states in the legend up there, the key, whatever, then presumably the city will not be able to delete them. But I wasn't aware that the city was able to delete the roads in Transport Fever 1 originally. So there you go. Maybe it's just to highlight that the player can indeed remove and rebuild at his choice. Who honestly knows? I do not know. But certainly what I do know is that this update is fantastic. It's substantial. It's very, very interesting. I like it. I like it a lot. I'm really looking forward to the next one. I will indeed try to be slightly more timely with my next update for Transport Fever 2 Development Highlight Series. But for now, I'm going to have to leave it there, and I'm going to say thank you very much for watching. My name, of course, has been Potato. This has been the Transport Fever 2 Development Highlight Series. Thanks for watching.